across the world. And I'm privileged to have my guest today, my fellow Toastmasters or fellow storyteller, Aaron Beverly.
Much appreciated. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be here with you. We don't talk to people like you every day. So once in a while, you have the privilege.
Well, some people talk to me every day.
Oh, wow, that's your family. That's your very close family and friends. Thank you so much. Let's get into it. Your biography, you said something in your biography that really got me excited. You said introversion is an asset when it comes to communication. Being an introvert and doing this, it means a lot to me. But I want our audience to understand your own perspective of saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was coming up, I was always introverted, meaning that whenever I was around a large group of people, I would lose energy and I would regain my energy when I was by myself. So I was always more of a loner. I was always fine being by myself as a kid, playing by myself. But growing up, I realized that there were people that said that I needed to talk more, that I needed to be in the spotlight more, because those were the people that got ahead. I tried that and I wasn't really comfortable with it. And I tried it for a long time, but it never felt quite natural for me. And sometimes I could fake it better than others. But when I really started to sit down and learn more about being an introvert and what it truly means, that's when I started to realize that all of the things that we typically know as introverted traits, one, for example, when we think, we like to internalize a lot. So we're very internal. We like to think how we can better ourselves. And that's really useful if you're trying to create a story, if you're trying to create a personal story, and if you're trying to come up with some ways that you've learned different lessons throughout your life. So that introspection is very, very valuable. And it's more well known for an introvert. Not saying that an extrovert can't have it, but that's one of the skill sets that an introvert has. A lot of times introverts are quiet, and quiet is giving you an opportunity to listen. So when people talk to me, they'll typically find themselves talking more than I will talk, and I will listen to them. And I get told how good of a conversationalist that I am, or how easy it is to talk to me. And it's only because I choose to prioritize the other person talking versus me talking.
Wow.
So those are just a couple of examples of how, as an introvert, you can utilize certain traits to make yourself better as a speaker and in social environments.
Good. Thank you so much. And in a work environment, amongst friends and family, you can see that people want to keep talking. And it seems that the person with the loudest voice always dominates. And I've seen people try to talk the other person down.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems that the person that has the louder voice has something to say, but then that's not always the truth. Thank you for sharing that. Now that we are starting the conversation gradually, we know your title, 2019 World Champion of Public Speaking. That's not a small feat. But my question is, when and how did you start your public speaking journey?
Wow. My public speaking journey, I would have to say, started when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and my mom forced me to read a passage from the Bible in front of the entire church congregation. But I would say formally, it started around 2013. And that was when I gave my first workshop presentation. I remember giving a presentation about crucial conversations. So it was a book about how to handle conversations when the stakes are high or when emotions are high. And I remember how good it felt to teach people and for people to take what I was giving and come up to me afterwards and say that what I was giving to them was valuable. That sent me down a path of, okay, this is something that I want to do regularly. So that was the first time that I became a professional public speaker, if we want to call it that. And I haven't looked back since.
Oh, wow, thank you, and we always have to speak. It's better anybody starts a journey at a very early age, which is what you did, and that was really good. So now let's talk about the world champion of public speaking.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to prepare for a typical speech, a typical contest? So we have three. I watch your video, 2012, 2016, 2019. You can use any one of them as an example. How long does it take you to prepare?
Well, that may be a bad question to ask me because for me, speaking is a gift, but it's also a curse because it was always in my mind. How can I make this speech better? I cannot tell you how many times I ran my 2016 or my 2019 World Championship speeches in my head. It's literally countless. And I'm always thinking about how to say certain lines or how to reword a certain sentence so that it's more powerful. It was always in the back of my mind. Now, when it came to performing it in practice, the way that we typically know practice to be in front of an actual live audience, I would say roughly about 10 different audiences would have heard my speeches in any given year. But by the time I got to 2016, that's when I really started to understand my style of speaking. So I didn't need quite as much audience input. So I didn't go out seeking a lot of feedback about the speech itself. Instead, what I started focusing on was the reaction of the audience. So if I get to a certain line, am I expecting a certain reaction from the audience? What reaction is it? Is it a laugh? Is it a sigh? Is it some way of them acknowledging that they're listening and that they comprehend, and more importantly, that they can connect with what I'm saying? So I would go off of those reactions, and that would be the feedback that I would use for my future speeches. So I would say from 2016 and beyond, I didn't require as much in-person practice, but still I would go out and just see where the audience would react for various parts of my speech.
Good, good. Thank you. You mentioned something that is very important. At the early stage of my Toastmasters, it feels like when I go to a contest and I hear somebody giving a speech at the contest, it seems that the person that get the most reaction win the contest. Now, Toastmasters change the rule and say that, well, when you're giving a speech, you cannot refer to what somebody has said, and that actually made people to get less reaction when they give speech because they can't use the other person's speech as a setup anymore. And I know that in your own case, you've talked about call and response and different techniques. I watch your District 47 keynote when you use the word fish. And it seems that when you use the word, every time you got a response from the audience. So in your own case, what would you say, which advice would you give for getting a reaction consistently from the audience? And how did you come about the word psh? And which word would you suggest for me to use? Because I want to be able to do
that. So the first answer to how did I come up with the word psh, it was just a reaction that I've always done as a kid. It was just an expression that I was familiar with where it just meant that what you're saying is nonsensical, that this is absolutely ludicrous. And I just decided to use it in one of my speeches and just ran with it. But when it comes to how to get a genuine audience reaction consistently, I would say number one, you have to make sure that you know your personal story. A personal story about a challenge that you have overcome is probably going to get the most consistent audience reaction because that's what the audience is looking for. If there's an audience member out there that's struggling with a problem and you come to them with a possible solution and you back it up with your own personal story so that they know you're not just saying this, you've lived it, that's going to get a genuine connection with your audience and a genuine reaction. Now, when it comes to humor is a little tougher because for me, it's a lot of trial and error. Whenever I'm in a conversation, for instance, I'll try to drop some lines to see if one person laughs. if that one person laughs, I'm keeping that in the back of my mind because I want to try to test that out on a larger audience. So it may be in a group conversation where I'll try that line again and see how it impacts the audience that I'm speaking to. And if I get a laugh there, okay, I think I have something that's genuinely funny and it can probably make its way into my speech. That's one way that I do it, but sometimes I'll just come up with something and try to test it out in a practice speech, and I'll see what the reaction is. I also have a lot of experience listening to other speakers, so I don't steal their content. I never will tell anybody to steal anybody's content ever. But some of their joke structure or some of their delivery of how they tell their jokes, I'll keep that in my mind. So if there's a certain tone that they use, if there's a certain inflection, I'll see if I can mimic that and see if I can get the same response. And a lot of times now that I've built up that experience, I tend to be more right than wrong.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Talking about joke structure, studying your speeches on YouTube, I spend a lot of time doing that. I discovered that something that you like doing is to take your audience in this direction and quickly change it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're changing, you're giving an answer to an expectation, but then what you usually say is different from what they expect you to say. And it seems that you get a response every time you do that. And that's something that I really like about your style.
Yeah, it's called the incongruency theory of humor. Wow. So you lead somebody in one direction and then you swerve and give them something that they weren't expecting. And in that moment of the unexpected, that's what generates the laugh, or at least that's according to the theory.
Wow. That's very safe, because other types of humor, self-deprecating or picking on audience, can be very risky. It could easily go wrong. It could easily go wrong. So we have a guest here on our show. Sid Chopra is asking, when you give presentation, when you talk about recording, you said you had like 10 recordings and things like that earlier now. He's asking, do you record with the audience? Because I know that people can have different opinion about that. When I first started my Toastmasters, I usually just record all my speeches, and sometimes I have to record people while I'm doing that. So I think that's why he's asking that question.
Yes. So early on in my speaking career, or my contest speaking career, I did a couple of times record the audience. However, I realized when I was looking at the audience's feedback, they were no longer natural, because they knew that they were on camera, so they wanted to make sure that they looked good for the camera. I didn't want that. I wanted genuine responses. So if I had to shift the camera away from the audience and just put it on myself, that was fine. Instead of focusing on what the audience looks like, I just wanted to focus on the audio. I wanted to understand, what did they laugh at? What was I getting a reaction, like a sigh or an expression of shock? Those were the signals that I was listening for now. So I record the audience, but it's more audible rather than the visual.
Yes. So something that I also find very interesting is when you talk about audience. I've experienced different audiences before. I've have people or audience that are in court I can call unfriendly or difficult audience that probably are doubting what you're saying based on their facial expression, or they're even showing that they don't like you. My question is, have you found yourself in such a situation, and how did you maneuver it?
I don't think I've ever had a situation where I had to speak to a hostile audience where they were just not listening to me because they didn't think I had anything of value to say. I don't think I've ever had an extreme audience like that. One thing that I will say to your question, though, is that a lot of times we think that the audience isn't receiving what we're giving, and we may misjudge a facial expression or a gesture. For instance, if somebody's crossing their arms, but they're looking directly at you, one would think that, oh, they don't like what I'm saying, or they're defensive. For me, crossing my arms is actually a rest position. And it's actually when I'm looking directly at somebody, when I'm crossing my arms, is I'm focused on what they're saying. So we shouldn't misjudge somebody's gesture or body language all of the time, because there could be somebody, for instance, that's yawning while you're talking, but it could just be because they haven't had enough coffee yet, but they're very interested in what you had to say.
Yes.
So I always try to keep that in mind when I'm speaking to my audiences, that if I see a certain expression or if I see somebody with a certain body language, I don't try to read too much into it, and I keep going on with what I was talking about. Now, what I will focus on is the person, or are the people that are smiling, the people who are giving me good feedback. And I'll work off of that energy. And while I'm still addressing all of the crowd, I'll still eventually make eye contact to everyone, including the ones who are seemingly not very responsive to what I'm saying. But at the same time, I'm feeding off of the positive energy and going about my talk.
Wow, interesting. I mean, a good example of recent event is the inaugural speech that Elon Musk gave a sign, and people have different opinion about that. What does this mean in America? What does it mean in Germany? And things like that. We're not going to get into politics today. That's going to be another day. Now, I think Sid said something here. It's kind of hard to accurately assess and remember the audience reaction while presenting. Of course, it takes a skill to maneuver that. And do you have anything to say about that?
So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So is it how to quickly ascertain?
To quickly and accurately, because sometimes it could be interpreted wrongly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, a good example is what you just gave, the folding of hand. Right? If I'm talking to somebody and they fold their hand, I could easily think they're not interested in what I'm saying.
Right.
But then you just said that might be wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the quickly that gets me, because I don't think, for me, I'm only speaking for myself, I've never done anything quickly. Quickness has never been my style. It's actually one of the reasons why impromptu speaking is one of the styles of speaking that I'm still trying to get better at, and I have a long way to go in my own mind. But for me, I like to study, and I like to see patterns. So if I'm talking to an audience and I'm seeing patterns that I'm familiar with, then I'm able to quickly determine, like, okay, I think what I'm saying is resonating. So what I'm trying to say is that it comes quickly and more accurately with the more experience that you have. I've been speaking to certain audience, like a Toastmaster audience, for instance. I've been speaking to that audience for 15 years. I know what Toastmasters are going to laugh at. I know what they are going to find offensive. I know what to stay away from. I know what to try to utilize more. So I'm able to understand and interpret a Toastmaster audience a lot better than I would a group of 15-year-olds, for instance. I am not good at speaking to teenagers because it has been a while since I've been a teenager. I am not a hip guy. I don't even know if they use the word hip, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I know what you mean. So at the beginning of my Toastmasters journey, I've given speeches that Toastmasters audience have considered inappropriate, and I moved from that. I stayed away from such speeches, religion, politics, and other things that you can talk about. So I think one of our guests from my Broward College Toastmasters, Cassandra Williams, is saying something about how many times would you suggest a person to practice their speech before speaking before an audience?
I don't think that there's a definite number. I would say you practice as much as you're comfortable. So if you're giving a speech and you're not able to remember the words, that's a sign that you need to practice a little bit more. However, if you are one of those rare people who are able to write a speech and then practice it a couple times and then you have it ingrained, that's great. That's a superpower. It's not a superpower that I have. I always say that there's no such thing as the way. There is only a way, and it is up to you to find your way. How many times you practice your speech is you finding your way. As I said, for me, it was countless how many times I practiced my speeches, because in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about my speeches. And in addition to that, I record my speeches, audio record my speeches, and then I listen back to it. And in my mind, that's another form of practice, because it's another form of internalization.
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you. And Cassandra is saying thank you for that. She really appreciates your response on that.
Oh, my
and
pleasure.
thank you for joining, Cassandra. One of the things that I also find very interesting from your story, I watched your 2016 speech. Your title, 57-word title. How did you came about using that kind of a title at a contest? And was there a risk that you were thinking about? Were you surprised about what the outcome eventually became? And you also did something in 2019. You used that title as a setup for a punchline during your 2019 championship, and you won that.
Yes.
That sequence of events, did you expect it? Was it surprising to you?
So the idea originally came from another Toastmaster, one of the first Toastmasters that I came across on YouTube by the name of Andy Dooley.
Yes.
Andy had a very long title in one of his humorous speech contests at the district level, and I believe he won that. And I thought to myself, wow, how cool is that you have this long title that generates this laugh before you even step on the stage. But not too many people would have been brave enough to do that in a contest setting, because there are risks, or at least there are perceived risks when it comes to that. Will the judges accept that? Will the contest chair allow you to do it? So there was definitely a risk. And I did have some contingencies just in case that Balraj, who was the contest chair at the World Championship in 2016, I had a contingency just in case he said no. However, I gave Balraj my title, and he looked at it, and all he said was, okay. And that he went with it. And the reaction, I expected the reaction, because a lot of Toastmasters had seen Andy Dooley, and they thought that no one was ever going to be brave enough to do that at the World Championship. So the fact that I did, and then my title just kept going on and on. My title was longer than Andy Dooley's. In fact, people were telling me, Aaron, maybe you should cut the word from 57 down to 20. And I thought to myself, no, because somebody can remember 20 words. But 57, only a crazy savant of words is going to be able to remember all of that title in the first time hearing it. So there was definitely a risk, but high risk, high reward. And then the 2019 quip, for me, that was more so of a turning of the page. I wanted to address, hey, yes, I am the guy that had the long title, but this isn't that speech. So I gave a quick reference to it, got a little bit of a laugh. I did expect a stronger laugh, so I did overestimate my the virality of my 2016 speech. But overall, it was just meant to be a quick piece of humor and also turn the page and allow me to dive in deeper on the new 2019 speech.
Wow, excellent. Did you try that with an audience for sure to know that it was going to get you a laugh?
I tried it a couple times with a couple of audiences, and it got a good enough reaction for me to say, okay, I think this will work on a larger stage. Like I said before, I had spoken to Toastmaster audiences so much that I had a good idea of what they would find humorous and what they wouldn't. Now, the thing that I did overlook was that when I was practicing those speeches, or giving that speech and practicing the quip, I was practicing it in front of my home district. So I had two home districts at the time. I was competing for District 18, and where I live in District 38, I was giving speeches to those audiences who knew me and knew my speech and knew the title, knew the whole history about it. But going to the convention, not as many people knew me. There were some people who were coming to the convention and they were probably just new Toastmasters. They really hadn't experienced a world championship of public speaking, and especially one from 3 years prior. So that was something that I did overlook.
Good. Thank you so much. So there's a response that led to a question here.
Mm-hmm.
Seed is saying, did the world champion of public speaking start limiting the length of the speech based on what you did? Because somebody can come next year and say they're going to give 100 and see if it's going to get. So
no,
what do you think about that?
No, I was fully expecting the Aaron Beverly rule to be created after 2016. I wanted it to be a limit to the title, that it could only be a certain number of words, and that would have been great. I would have been immortalized in the Toastmasters contest book, but it never came. I think the leadership in Toastmasters, they must think that no one is going to be brave enough to do that again after Aaron did it. However, they may be surprised one day. Somebody may break out that 100-word title, and then I think there will be a rule.
You know what? If that happens, I think some people going to stand up from the audience and just go to their room and come back. Like I can't really listen to this. What's going on here? But I'm looking forward to a situation whereby they address it, and let's see if somebody's going to come up with a speech with a longer title. And I'm looking forward to see what the response will look like.
Yeah. Or it may be the extreme where somebody may only have one-word title. Actually, I think there has been a few one-word titles. Ouch, for instance, is a one-word title, but maybe one day somebody comes up and the title is
just empty. So now that you're here, I know you're very skilled. That's why we're all here to listen to you. But generally, if you have a mentee, what would you advise the person about title of a speech?
I would say that the title comes last. To not put so much pressure on yourself to come up with a great title. Yes, the title is the first introduction to the speech, but at the same time, I believe that the true content of your speech is what should shine the most. And in fact, one of the reasons why I wanted to give a long title for my speech was because I was tired of people saying that your speech title has to be short and concise and memorable. And I would always hear that. But my thought process was, they're not supposed to just remember the title. They're supposed to remember the content of the speech. So I decided, okay, I will make a title that is not going to be easily memorizable. And I did that. Nobody remembers the exact speech title. Very few people remember the exact speech title. But a lot of people know about the title and how it made them feel. And for me, that's a better impact of the title than just the stressing about what your title should be. So I always go for the effect. And the effect also comes from the content of the speech. The title is just an add-on.
Thank you so much. You mentioned something that is very important in speeches, how the title makes the audience feel. Mm-hmm. Audience feel. In your own experience, how have you been able to play on exciting emotion on the side of the audience? What skills have you used to make sure that people are not just listening to you, you're making them feel something, and hopefully what they're feeling can be expressed in form of reaction? And we know the judges like that. Judges like it when somebody's giving a speech and they can look at the audience and say, well, the audience is actually reacting to this speech. So what is the playbook for you to make sure that your audience can be moved emotionally and hopefully respond through their reaction?
I will take that answer, or I will take that question and try to put it more in, make it more about story. It's not necessarily about how the speech itself makes them feel. Now, there are definitely ways that a speech can make somebody feel, and it really comes down to that personal touch. But for me, when I'm on stage, especially for a speech contest for Toastmasters, I'm focusing on the characters in my story. It's not, can the audience really connect with me and react to what I'm saying? Can they connect and react to the character in the speech? So not Aaron Beverly, the speaker, but Aaron Beverly, the character. For instance, if I just walked up to somebody and say that, hey, I went to a wedding and I had to protect the shoes, okay, that's fine. But in the story format, where I'm building up the anticipation of how I'm protecting these shoes with my dear life, how they were going to be ransomed if I couldn't fulfill this job right. So people are getting behind Aaron Beverly, the character, because he has this mission and there's an antagonist that's trying to take the shoes from him. And this is a crazy story about him protecting the shoes and how everybody's trying to get them from him. And at the end, I lose the shoes. And because I had built up so much anticipation, because I had built up so much tension in the speech about me protecting those shoes, when I told the audience that I lost the shoes, there was an audible, oh, because the audience was invested in the character drama. They wanted me to keep the shoes. They wanted me to win, and I didn't win.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Now, still talking about the speech you just mentioned, we have a question from Sid here, which I was also thinking about. A very good question. When you're preparing for a world champion of public speaking, a lot of things come to your mind. You start thinking about your personal experiences, and you have a couple of stories, which you have advised in one of your videos to have a library of stories.
Yes.
When he's asking, when you now go back to those stories, how do you know which one of them is good enough for the contest? And at what point do you bring them in?
There are a couple of ways that I've decided that a story was good enough. One is just to test it out in one of your Toastmaster meetings and see what happens. So I always like to take the mindset of a scientist when it comes to speaking. I just want to test something, see what happens, and then I start to break down why something may or may not have worked. But other times I look at the stories or the ideas of stories that I have, and does it make me laugh? Does it make me react? Do I feel strongly about it? If I feel passionate enough about it, if I feel strongly enough about it, then I feel that it's worthy enough to go into some type of practice speech. I talked before about integrating some lines and some quips into personal conversations. Mm-hmm. I'll do the same thing with stories. I'll tell people a story, whether that's my mother or my sister or my friends. I'll tell them a story and see how they react. If they don't laugh, okay, maybe I just need to change the delivery a bit. I'll try it with another group of friends. If they don't laugh, then I know, okay, what I did probably isn't funny and I should probably find something else. But if they do laugh and they start laughing consistently, that's when I'll start building it and take it to larger and larger audiences.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for answering that. Thank you for answering. I really appreciate it. So this next question is from Cassandra. I see that you just answered the first part of it, which is how you get to that practice before you come to Toastmasters. So you answered that already. But then the next thing, what drives you to speak publicly? And what do you think should be a person's main purpose of speaking?
What drives me is the knowledge that I can impact somebody through the words that I say. And for me, being a more positive person, at least outwardly, in my mind, I can get a little bit cynical, but I think that's about everyone. We always have that voice in the back of our mind that's a little bit more cynical than the outward appearance that we have. But I enjoy bringing value to people. Growing up, I never thought that I was providing anything of value to people. I didn't think I was earning my keep. So by speaking and by teaching people, I feel that I'm contributing to their lives. I'm making their lives better in hopefully at least some small way. And that's what drives me. And then, of course, there's the benefit of being able to connect with people around the world. Toastmasters has been such an invaluable company because it's allowed me to see a broader world, for me to experience cultures that I otherwise would have never experienced. And I know that Toastmasters is all about public speaking. So again, that drives me to keep getting better as a speaker because I want to keep bringing value to people. And I also want to keep connecting with people in these different cultures and these different backgrounds because I feel that it makes me a better person.
Thank you so much. Thank you for answering that question. So the part of the conversation that I also think is very important is when you are giving a speech and you find out that you make a mistake that is very clear to you as a person. How do you adjust to that without letting the audience know that something is going wrong?
We call it lifting the veil. And when you mess up, very rarely do I suggest you lift the veil. The only times that I will lift the veil is if I want to just bring some lightheartedness and humor. So for instance, if I'm speaking in front of an audience and I trip over my words, I'll do something like blah, 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 blah. And that generally gets the audience to laugh. It'll be a small chuckle. It's not going to be just this huge outward laugh, but it's a way to show that, hey, I don't take myself too seriously. I'm a human just like you. A lot of times, we as the speaker, we get into our own head and think that we have to be perfect. And I don't think that I've ever been perfect in any talk that I've ever given. It's always about that. It's always about how you perceive yourself more than how the audience is actually perceiving you. So whenever you're thinking that, oh, I just made a mistake. Oh, did the audience notice that? Stop thinking like that. The audience probably didn't even notice. And if they did, if you keep going on as if nothing happened, they're going to forget about it, especially if you're giving them something of value, because what they will remember is the value, not the mistake.
Wow, thank you so much. Excuse me. In one of my clubs, I have a distinguished Toastmaster. I would say that as a Toastmaster, we don't apologize. Because when people give speeches, they start saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and all this. So it actually irritates him a lot. And so just to make sure people don't do that again, that's always what he says. So I was just hoping to hear your own opinion about that. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One of the things that's also very important in giving a speech that we don't really talk about, and I'm not sure you talk too much about it in any of your video. And can you guess what it is?
I can't.
Timing. Timing of the speech. The last contest you were there, that's where I met you. We connected, and thank you for being so gracious to talk to me. It seems that there was time disqualification even at that stage, the final stage, and which makes me wonder, how can that be prevented? In your own situation, how have you been able to work on timing of your speech such that you don't get disqualified at that kind of a level?
Okay, let me adjust my seat for this one because I feel strongly about this one. As a speaker, especially as a contest speaker, you have to be the master of your talk. Meaning that you need to know exactly what words are going to generate a response from the audience. So you should have had enough practice and enough iterations of your speech to know what the audience is going to react to and what they won't. You also need to know at what time in your speech will you see the green light, which is the minimum time limit, the yellow light, which is a warning that, hey, you have 2 minutes to wrap up, or 1 minute to wrap up or something like that. I forget the exact time, and what are you saying when you see the red? Now, when you see the red, you have 30 seconds. And if you go over that 30 seconds, you will be disqualified. You have to know what word you have to say or what word you say when you see those signals. Now, sometimes the audience may react in a way that you weren't expecting. Sometimes, no matter how much you practice, the audience is going to laugh at something that you weren't expecting them to laugh at, or they're going to laugh longer for something that you weren't expecting them to laugh as long for. When that happens, you can adjust your pacing so that you can get back on track. One of the things that I did as a speaker, I would time the audience reactions. So if I were to show you a script of one of my speeches, after every line, you would see a number sequence. It would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm timing my audience's reaction in the script so that when I read out the script, I'm going to pause for those many counts because I'm expecting some reaction. Now, when it comes to be live, if the audience doesn't laugh as long, okay, that's fine. I have now a lot more margin so that when they do laugh for longer than I'm expecting, I can allow them to laugh a little bit longer because I have that margin already built into my speech. Example, when I was given the 2016 World Championship of Public Speaking speech, one of the lines that I said, be honest, you enjoyed that, didn't you? So in the script, those lines, be honest, 1, 2. You enjoyed that, didn't you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because I knew that that was going to get a bigger laugh. I think the longest that I've ever counted for, I think the longest may have been an 8 count. And I think it was that reaction, you enjoyed that, didn't you?
Because you were almost sure that was going to get a reaction.
That was going to get a long laugh.
Wow, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that we also talk about when giving a speech is that as a speaker, you have to grab the attention of your audience, or in a better way, capture the attention of your audience with a hook. And even in professional world, we talk about elevator pitch. And people will say, well, when you're in an elevator with somebody, you have to grab the person's attention, say something in a way that they're going to feel like contacting you so that they can have more conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And most commonly, what people have done is to ask a question, a rhetorical question. I want to know your thoughts about capturing an audience. What other things can be done besides just asking a question, such that we can also improve our speaking through that?
Right. There are a lot of ways to get attention. A lot of times when we say you need to have a good hook, and that's you have to have a good premise or a good topic that's going to make the audience want to hear more, or you want to capture their attention, so you tell a quick humorous story. There are so many different ways to get the audience hooked into what you have to say. Silence is another one. A lot of times people will walk onto a stage and they'll just look at the audience with a smile on their face, or sometimes not even a smile on their face. And the anticipation is building. You want this person to say something, but they're not. And then they start speaking. So without even saying a word, they've gotten your attention and they've hooked you in. Now, the key, though, is to make sure that your speech not only has a hook, but that you're able to keep them on that hook. And that comes in the strength of your story. So it's not just about hooking them in. It's also about keeping them hooked on every word that you say. And that comes, again, through the strength of your story and the strength of your characters and their conflict.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's good to have the best, talking to the best and learning from your experiences. So one of the things that I've also understand is that when you give speeches, there's different ways to speak clearly when giving a story. And you talked about storytelling a little bit now. What I've learned is that when you're giving a story, you have to set things up and introduce characters in a way that can make the image really clear in the minds of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, storytelling, what advice would you give when we give stories such that that can capture the audience interest as much as possible and also keep them engaged throughout the whole speech? Because there's a way to tell stories and you feel that people are falling off, and there's
Yeah.
a way to tell story and you know that you're actually talking to somebody that is listening and following what you're saying. So storytelling, I know you also have that. I didn't say it in your introduction. I apologize. You also want some story slam. I saw that in your
Yes.
in your biography. So based on that experience and Toastmasters experience, what advice would you give with giving such stories in a speech?
Whenever I am coaching someone and I look at their script, I always look to see what type of words they're using. Are you just trying to narrate a story, or are you putting in what I call sensories? And sensories are any words that evoke one of the five senses. The easiest one is sight. So I can say, I was running. Okay, you're running, but I was frantically running down the street. So, okay, not only are you running, but you're frantic about something and you're running down the street. I can see the street clearly in my mind. And you don't have to go so detailed that you make the audience, you force the audience to think exactly what it is that you have in your mind.
Mhm.
No, I say I'm running down the street, and the street for me looks like my neighborhood block.
Mhm.
However, the street for somebody in India looks different. The street for somebody in China looks different. But street sparks a visual in their mind. So when you say, how do you keep the audience engaged? I like to engage their minds with sensories. So I'm putting in so much vivid language, so much visual, so many visual words in there that I want the audience to have a picture in their mind. One of the signals that I knew that a contestant was going to be dangerous for me was if they were telling their story and I was visualizing their story as they were giving it. I remember in 2018, for instance, I was the first speaker
Mhm.
and it was a strong showing. And it was the last speaker. He was giving his speech. He was talking about a car chase that he was in with the cops. And he was talking about this, how fast he was going and the sirens that were running. And as he was talking, as he's giving all of these images, I'm visualizing it in my head. And at one point, I just had to say, uh-oh, this guy is dangerous. He may win. And sure enough, he won our district contest in 2018. So those visuals are very important, not just for the general engagement of the audience, but the engaging of their minds.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for saying that. We have a question from Sid here. It's saying, what are the mistakes you see when domain experts are presenting to people outside the discipline or lay audiences?
They forget that these audiences are not as knowledgeable as they are. And it just happens time and time again. And it's so easy to do, especially when you're working on something and you see it every single day. To you, it's logic. To you, this is just basic knowledge. But you have to remember your audience didn't put in as much study as you. Even I get caught up in this sometimes when I'm trying to give people tips about public speaking. And they ask me, well, Aaron, how can I become better with vocal variety? And to me, it's just logical. You just shift your voice around a little bit. You pause here and there. But I have to remember, I can't be that general because to me it's logic, but for them, they have to learn it a little bit more. So I have to break it down a little bit. So I tell them that, hey, there are various ways that you can practice vocal variety. You can do volume. You can go very high. You can go very low. You can do speed. You can speed things up, or you can go slowly. And you can mix it all up together. You just have fun with it and practice it. So you have to keep in mind that things that are logical for you may not be logic for somebody else. You always have to put yourself in the audience's shoes, not your own.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. One of the things that you mentioned in your videos that I've watched is having a public speaking mentor. That impacted your journey when you were developing, and you're still interested in that. So what would you advise when someone decides, well, they want to find a mentor? Who should they choose as their mentor in that kind of situation?
Well, I had criteria for finding a quality mentor. And for me, the first one is that your mentor should be someone who has been where you want to go. For me, I remember when I was first competing, I first competed in 2012, thought that I was going to win the entire contest in my first year ever competing, came second at the area contest, which is round 2 of 6 at the time. And I remember thinking, okay, I need help. So I went to a person who had more experience. And I was lucky enough for it to be Dilababe Sekera, who was the 2005-2006 president of Toastmasters and also happened to be a professor at my school. He was the one that introduced me to Toastmasters. But he was also a second place winner in the World Championship of Public Speaking. He had the experience. He had been where I wanted to go. Now, he didn't reach the pinnacle. He didn't get to the he didn't win the championship, I should say. But he had made it so much further than I had ever made it at that point. And that's what you have to find. You have to find somebody who is at least one level above where you are currently placing. So if you are trying to find or if your goal is to get to the area contest, well, talk to somebody in your club who has been to the area contest. If you want to get to the district, okay, then somebody who's only been to the area contest probably is not going to be the best mentor for you. You should probably try to find somebody who's been to the district level. If you want to learn a different skill, you find somebody that's more learned in that skill. So you always want to find somebody who is just a little bit better than you, at the very least, just a little bit better than you. But to find a good mentor, they have to be where you want to be. Good. Or have been where you want to be.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have another question here from Nigeria, Adekune Ojuri. Thank you for joining. So he's asking, if you were in a position of a judge, what are the probable criteria you're going to be looking at when you're viewing a public speaker?
Me being a judge, number one, if I'm at a certain level, so if I'm a judge for the World Championship of Public Speaking, for instance, at that stage, you're going to have a lot of good speakers. So I give everybody top scores. However, when you start speaking, I'm going to look for any reason to dock points. Because for me, that's going to be the best way for me to differentiate. However, at the same time, I'm also looking at the strength of your story. So when you're talking, am I able to visualize? If I'm not able to visualize it and you're just telling me things as a narrator, and not really going deeper into the story. You're not telling me the emotions of the characters in your story. Instead, you're just preaching to me. I know that that's not going to be a very good speech. And this may be a bad thing for me to say because now people are going to be looking at it whenever they see me at a speech contest. But when I'm at a speech contest, I'm taking notes about what I'm hearing and basically about what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. And if I stop writing, it's because in my mind, this isn't a good speech. Because you're not taking me there. You're talking at me. You're not talking to me. You're not telling me a story. You're just telling me a speech.
Thank you so much. You mentioned preaching. It seems you know one or two things about preaching. We're going to learn about that another time.
Yes, indeed. Yes, I've had experiences where I was guilty of just preaching and not truly providing value to my audience. But it's a story for another time, maybe.
Yes, thank you. One of the things, I know we're running out of time, but I want to get some questions in as we wrap up. What do you think all the world champion of public speakers that you know have in common?
What do we all have in common?
Because you guys probably talk, right? You chat and check on each other. Based on that interaction, what you say, oh, you did that, I also did that. It seems that we're on the same level on certain things.
I would say the thing that we have the most in common are probably those intangibles. And the biggest intangible that I can think of right now is perseverance. We all have that level of perseverance where we get feedback and sometimes that feedback isn't good. But we take it, we absorb it. Sometimes we apply it. We apply feedback that we get. Sometimes we don't. But we just have the perseverance to keep trying. And that's what you have to do. Very few people actually win the world championship in their first year of ever competing.
Wow.
The majority of world champions have competed multiple times.
Yes.
And it's tough. Sometimes you feel like, there's no way that I'm going to do this again, especially if you get to the world championship, for instance, and you don't make it, or you get to the semifinals and you don't make it. You think to yourself, oh man, I have to go through months of preparation and months of contests again. I did that for 8 years. That was 8 years of my life. Every year going through that process. Sometimes I would get all the way to August. Sometimes my journey would stop in May. But I just persevered and kept trying over and over again until I eventually won.
Good. Thank you for that answer. So looking at what you guys have in common. So if you now think about your own journey, how is your own journey different from most of other contestants that you know?
Oh, every champion has a different story because every champion has different mentors. Every champion has different feedback that they've been given. Every champion has a different perspective. For instance, people ask me, oh, Aaron, what's your favorite speech contest or speech contest speech? And they're expecting me to say one of my speeches, and it never is, especially not my 2019 World Championship winning speech. I actually like my 2016 speech better than my 2019 speech. However, I enjoyed creating my 2019 speech more than I enjoyed creating my 2016 speech. At the same time, my favorite speech of all time is 2014, Danajaya. I love that speech. It's the speech that I believe transformed the way that I speak, because when I saw Dan speak, he was just so simple and yet powerful at the same time. And then if I had to give my top 5 speeches of all time in the World Championship of Public Speaking, it would be Danajaya, definitely number 1. My second would be Ed Tate in 2000. And then the next 2 are actually the more recent champions, and Jocelyn and Cyril. I love their speeches. And then a rare one that a lot of people don't really know about, Willie Jones.
Yeah.
Willie Jones, had a very extemporaneous style of speech. And I just enjoyed the way that he interacted with that audience for that time. It was a masterclass of truly knowing your audience. It's one of those speeches that was just so different, and I love different.
Wow.
But yeah,
Thank you.
to answer your question, we have so many different journeys. And as I listen to these different champions speak, I just am amazed with the journey or the piece of the journey that they're sharing with me. So yeah, that's the biggest difference. We all have different journeys.
Wow. Thank you so much. One of the things that I enjoyed about you, you have a name on YouTube, public speaking mentor. How did you come up about that name? And based on your reviews of other people's speech, which is not something that most people do. You took your time to review your speech and review other people's speech, criticizing yourself. What is your greatest takeaway from that exercise of doing that?
Yeah. Well, with the name, I just wanted people to know me as a mentor. I didn't want to have Aaron Beverly just be like, oh, this is some type of celebrity of public speaking. I don't like fanfare, to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm an introvert. So if I have fans and people are rushing up to me, I don't want that. Instead, I want to be your mentor. I want to be your teacher. I want to be your friend. I want us to be seen more as equals because in my mind, we are. And honestly, in reality, we are. But still, I didn't want for me to be put on this higher pedestal. So I wanted to be known as your mentor. And public speaking is my niche. So your public speaking mentor. Now, when it comes to analyzing, you asked the question. I'm sorry, I forgot what that was.
So that was about you criticize your speech and other people's speech on YouTube, and I've been able to learn one or two things from those criticism that you've given.
Yeah.
My question is, personally, what is your biggest takeaway from that exercise? What is the most rewarding part of doing that?
I think the most rewarding part of doing that, well, actually, let me back up a bit, because the reason why I even started analyzing and breaking down first my speeches, and then I broke down a couple of others, and I think only posted one of those, which was Verity's 2021 speech. I think she was the 2021 world champion. Yes. I really enjoyed just picking their brain and seeing how, or thinking about how they constructed a speech and seeing the different techniques that they utilized and deciphering those techniques and breaking them down. I really enjoyed that process. And the reason why I started doing it was because I wanted to show people that, hey, just because you're a world champion of public speaking, just because you've reached this higher level of a contest speaking, doesn't mean you're perfect. So I wanted to call out some of the things that I wish I could have gone back and corrected. And I point out different things that I would have done differently if I was one of the other champions giving their speech. It's, again, just to show that, hey, everything that a world champion does isn't law. We're infallible, just like every other person in the world. Oh, sorry, we are fallible. We're not infallible. Yeah. We're fallible, just like every other person in the world. So just know that there are things that even we can do to improve. So that was the underlying reason why I started it. And I just enjoyed the breaking down. Like I said, I'm a scientist when it comes to speech. So when I hear something that I like, I try to break down why I like it.
Good. Thank you so much. We are wrapping up very soon. I promise you, we are getting to the end. There's a question from a fellow Toastmaster here, Cassandra. What advice would you give someone who does not want to compete, but just want to communicate within their circle of influence? What would you say to such a person?
I would say that competing isn't mandatory. Now, I believe that there are benefits to competition. I didn't realize that I was a fairly competitive person until I started speaking in the speech contest. And it was more so, I want to keep going forward. I want to get to the next stage. That was one of my mindsets. I wanted to keep speaking and keep winning so that I could keep speaking. So that was my drive, but that may not be everybody's drive. So if you're just trying to influence your own circle, you're fine just to practice your speeches in your local Toastmasters club and your everyday Toastmaster meetings and just trying to improve. Now, at some point, though, you're going to have to take what you learn in Toastmasters and apply it to the outside world and to that circle of influence. I believe it was Darren LaCroix, the 2001 world champion, that says nobody goes to Toastmasters to be better at Toastmasters. So for me, competition was my catalyst for growth. But for some people, their catalyst for growth is something different. But remember that it doesn't stop at the Toastmaster audience. You have to take it to the outside world.
Wow, thank you so much. My next question, we're going to the end very soon. What other impact are you hoping to achieve with being the 2019 World Champion of Public Speaking? Maybe we can help you achieve that.
That's something that I'm still trying to figure out, actually. Even after going on 6 years of being the World Champion of Public Speaking, I believe that there's weight to the title. I believe that it means something. We are ambassadors of a great organization in Toastmasters, every single world champion. Our title of world champion can never be taken away. Even if I decide to leave Toastmasters and come back 20 years later, guess what? I'm still the 2019 world champion of public speaking. So I know that I have influence. And I know that there are people that look up to what I do. So number one, I try to just, whenever I post something on social media, I want to keep in the back of my mind that I am basically an ambassador to a worldwide organization, and that there are people who will, or actually a better way to say that is, there is weight to the words that I say, but I'm still trying to think about what I want to do with that weight, if that makes sense. So I know that we're in America, we're going to be going through some very divisive times. We've already been in some divisive times. It's, in my eyes, it's probably only going to get worse. But at the same time, I want to encourage people to talk to one another. So just because you're a Republican or a Democrat doesn't mean that you can't talk to people who are of the opposite political spectrum.
Wow.
So I want to encourage people to talk, to treat each other like human beings, and demand more from your leadership. So whether you're a Democrat, whether you're Trump, whether you're Biden, it doesn't matter. I expect more from my leaders, and I expect for them to understand that their words carry weight. So yeah, it's still in process, but those are my strong opinions.
Well, eventually, when you know what it is, I'm here to support and collaborate with you on that journey. I'm interested in how I'll follow up with you on that. And I also saw the email that you were copied on, which we're going to talk about at another time. What was your experience when you went to Australia during your college days? I don't know. I usually like to ask a question that has nothing to do with the major topic, just to ease the tension. Something more fun.
Australia. So that was 2007. And that was really my first trip overseas where I didn't have any family around. And Australia, while it's still Western culture, it's still very different from the United States, with a completely different geography, a completely different, for lack of a better word, atmosphere. And by atmosphere, I mean there was just a different feel amongst the people, that they were just more laid back and they were more chill. And that was really my first experience with another culture that wasn't my own. And I really enjoyed experiencing that culture. I enjoyed the food. I enjoyed the people. I went over there for a study abroad program, but for me, it was really just one term of vacation. It was a great time. I enjoyed it immensely.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. That's my last question, but now I want you to say whatever you want to say to the audience. What last words do you have for our audience now that you just said that your word carried a lot of weight? So what weight do you want to put on us as we close the session?
I would say, don't be afraid to talk. A lot of times we have these opinions in our heads about other people, and we can get lost in that thought, where we make this whole story about how this person is the worst person in the world. And all we really needed to do to contrast that or to combat that was to actually talk to them. I remember after the election, I reached out to another world champion of public speaking by the name of Jim Key. And Jim and I are friends. And it was good to talk to each other because in my head, like, oh, how can you think this way? How can you do this or that? But when you talk to somebody, like, oh, you're a family guy just like me. You want to keep your family safe just like I do. We have different ways of getting there, but we're still human beings. So don't be afraid to talk to one another, especially if you are a Toastmaster. Our whole thing is about talking.
Yes.
We need to talk to one another and do so in a constructive manner and not a divisive and destructive manner. So talk about how we can come together rather than how we are so different and need to be apart.
Wow, wow. Bringing people together. Thank you so much for being here. Our guest, thank you. If this video session episode really increase your learning and really give you opportunity to be able to become better speaker, please like, comment, share, and join our channel if that's a possibility. And till next time, please help me say thank you to our guest, the 2019 World Champion of Public Speaking, Toastmaster Beverly. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Tolu. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking some time in your busy schedule to be here. I really appreciate it. I'm not taking it for granted. I really appreciate you. Thank you. And I hope I have opportunity to chat with you again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.